Now let's get to the heart of the news with our commentator who will give us her personal take on the events and issues of the day. And today we have the journalist, political affairs commentator and Arise news analyst, Dr. Constance Ikokwu. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Good to see you, Suleiman.
Well, quite a number of issues, potpourri of issues, but again, Nigeria is about one thing amongst all, and it's about subsidy. And our conversation with a man who's been a Labour leader and a governor and a party leader speaks volume. Now, let us in on first the conversation we had here on Arise with Comrade, the NLC president, who specifically spoke that they were unexcited, uninterested about those who were having the meeting with them. But perhaps it looks to President Tinubu to have rethought about it and brought in people like Adams Oshomole, who finally was able to broker peace with the other team members. What's the understanding of labor and labor politics, a politician on the other side, to helping Nigerians understand where we are at the moment in terms of understanding subsidy removal?
Well, Labour was planning a showdown with the government up until yesterday, and then today we heard that the planned nationwide strike had been called off for obvious reasons. They decided to go to the negotiating table with the federal government. That has been seen or considered as a reasonable move by Labour rather than shutting down the whole country. We have been discussing fuel subsidy removal for at least 24 years in this country. 24? Yes, at least. And we've had painstaking, robust debates about this particular issue. There are those that are for and those that are against. And everybody has talked about it. This time around, the issue for many people was not that the president announced it on the day of his swearing in. Talk about landing in hot water on that particular day or hitting the ground running. He did it. And I think there'll be more rough waters. He should be prepared for that. Anyway, some people say it's the manner that he went about it, not the announcement per se. So for instance, if you're going to announce that kind of big news, you have to have prepared to cushion the effect before you make the actual announcement. Because what happened was that it triggered panic buying. And then, before you knew it, prices of food skyrocketed, and even transportation is quite expensive now without having put down the necessary measures that will cushion the unintended effect of this announcement. And mind you that this is a country that is, we have gross inequalities within our society. We have had persistent inequalities for many years. And so there are people that this kind of announcement will disproportionately affect. So you have to think about it, take your time, plan it out before you take the move. I think that's where the issue was between the general public and the president. And
there seems to be something changing, Constance, and it has to do with the general public. And on Newsnight, our correspondents who across the country gauged opinions, and the shock is many Nigerians spoke to, a cross-section of Nigerians also said, well, it's an okay thing, we don't want subsidy, but the timing was wrong, we don't want subsidy, but there should have been palliatives. What do you think has changed to this, shocking understanding of some of the ordinary Nigerians out there?
Is there an understanding? People are still hoping that this is not true, that this is not actually happening. I think
they're still in a state of shock or disbelief.
So. Yes, disbelief, because all of a sudden you're buying fuel for 500 or more than 500 naira per liter. That is major. Especially in light of the fact that most people run businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, then you have to buy, petrol for your generator. So you haven't provided electricity. Now you have to pay 3 times more to fuel your generator for the whole day if you're a business that runs from 9 maybe to 5 or 6 p.m. It's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. And then some people have said that, yes, there are so many countries in West Africa where fuel is not subsidized, and so we shouldn't do that in Nigeria. That's not the accurate argument to make. All around the world, it shouldn't be either or. Most governments decide how to make life easier and better for their people. Some subsidize agricultural produce. You know, there are a lot of farmers, you know, they go to farm, they don't worry about whether the products, you know, gets bad. The government pays for it. It's heavily subsidized. This is to help the population. For some people, it's subsidizing electricity, energy, transportation. I'm very delighted that Comrade Oshiomhole mentioned mass transit. In Abuja, for instance, Abuja is a modern city. It's still developing. It's still growing. You do not have mass transit. Isn't that shameful? I think a lot of people will consider that very shameful. You need to have mass transit in a big society like this, in the capital city of the country. Apart from trains, have buses at least where people can pay a little something to take them to and fro. So these are things that you need to think about. That means that you're working for the people. You're thinking about how your policies affect the people, and then you plan it out, you know, for the long term.
Now let's talk about some of the key things now that also aligns to some of your points. TUC, specifically the Trade Union Congress, has said, has reeled out a few things that they would want the government to put in place by the end of June. But the big headline that many journalists are taking off the long list has to do with the take-home pay of the average Nigerian. They wanted pegged minimum wage at 200,000 naira. I said the smile on your face, but again, in the face of looking at the strength of the naira against the dollar and what we produce, how feasible is that?
Look, I smile because I know that's going to be difficult. So the minimum wage is 30,000. You're asking for 200,000 naira. That's reasonable in the normal circumstances. But even think about, the government is already borrowing 800 million to use for the palliatives. They are borrowing. They don't have that money. Where are they going to get 200,000 to pay you? I don't know how they will pull that off. So the point then becomes, we have an underperforming economy. The point is the government is not generating enough revenue. So you have to work actively on the economy for the long term. Because if you're robust, if you're buoyant, then you generate enough money to increase wages, increase benefits, other conditions. I also hear that Labour asks for a review of the National Health Insurance Scheme, asks for social policy for their workers. Of course, they also asked for direct subsidy for food items. And then there was a couple of other things, all within their right. All what, you know, a normal country should do for their citizens. That's why you have a government. But, you know, the president even inherited a broken country, a country that is, you know, highly indebted. So there's a lot of work to be done to find that money. I don't know whether they will agree to that 200,000 a month, but the focus should be the economy. The economy, it has to work. It has to work. If it doesn't work, I do not think any of this would take off.
Let me quickly by now say to our viewers that we're meant to have Comrade Osifo here, who's the president of the TUC, but he just called close to the program time to say he's still in a meeting. Because some of the key things here, let's go back to some of the things Oshiomhole also raised. Comrade Oshiomhole also spoke about oil theft. He also spoke about cutting down waivers. And I asked him what kind of waivers. And he said, you won't believe it, the kind of waivers some very wealthy, influential Nigerians get from the government. So let's talk more about oil theft, because I also recall that, and there was a time Tony Elumelu and his company cried out to the extent that, well, they virtually not get anything from, you know, this oil point. Everything is stolen.
I'm glad he raised those points. Those are great points. And we should look at those. Oil theft, not only oil theft, we need to reduce the cost of governance. If you're asking people to sacrifice fuel subsidy and sacrifice on their part, the government should be doing belt tightening. There should be belt tightening measures. It shouldn't be only for the ordinary Nigerian. Everybody at the top, the big people, the big businesses and government officials, they should also be doing something. There is a lot of waste.
I hope this is not the same as many years ago. You remember the phrase, the policy austerity measure?
No, it's not the same thing. Those were World Bank measures. So if you're going to take a loan, there are certain conditions they give to you before you take a loan. Look, we have to be serious in this country. So reducing government waste, that's one. Reducing the cost of governance, tackling graft, that is very important. Every government has to make tough choices. Yeah. Most times they shy away from them. President Buhari shied away from a lot of tough choices that he could have made. Restructuring is a tough choice. Fighting graft is a tough choice. Pruning down the civil service is a tough choice. The other parastatals and government agencies that literally do nothing or that have functions that overlap, that's a tough choice. You need to do all these things. And so if you're looking at the bigger picture of an economy that you want to perform, you have to sit down, have a team to begin, to tick off and actually take the action. So if President Tinubu has decided, yes, this subsidy is going to go, well, there was no provision for it after June anyway. So there wasn't any provision except he decided to do that. Well, there's no money anyway if he decided to keep it. So if he's going to take, he's taking this tough choice on the economy, he needs to do a lot of work. I hope they are able to get it together.
And you talked about restructuring, which is very important here, as the president and many of his key followers are big proponents of restructuring. Do you see the president, actualizing or activating the process again?
This president, Bola Tinubu, has changed over the years. Remember, he used to be an activist as well, and he was one of the arrowheads of restructuring, big time. When he was in Lagos before he became the governor, because a lot of Nigerians saw and agreed that this was a foundational issue that had to be dealt with in Nigeria. And of course, he saw himself as a progressive. Today, they call themselves the All Progressives Congress Party. We don't know how progressive they still are. I don't know if he even remembers that this is something that needs to be done. So we just have to watch and see and believe that, this president understands the deep problems of the country. The scars are very deep. You don't want to take measures that are shallow, measures that are convenient. You talk and you run away. No. If he has done this, we hope to see that other tough decisions that he follows through. So it's still early days. We're watching.
And, reducing the cost of governance, does this also, pan down to, appointees of government?
Appointees, well, I saw in the news that the president asked the National Assembly to appoint 20 advisors, I think. I don't think that might be a problem, not only for the president, but when you look at the entire ministers. So we have how many ministers? I think 36 or 37 ministers. So when you look across board, how many appointees people come with, or to the government, it could be part of that. But deeper than that, if you look into governance, there are so many areas where money disappear in this country, and you see people that in government that live large. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this. A lot of people might not like it, but you see government officials that have 30 children. And then you're wondering, you're a government official, your salary might not be so fantastic. How are you able to fend for this number of children, one person?
What about the fleet? Now that we're talking about subsidy, the long line, endless line of cars following, for instance, one political appointee.
It's part of that. It's part of reducing the cost of governance. It's part of reducing how also, for instance, there are so many government officials that are in power. When they are leaving, the cars go with them. I think every 4 years you have to change cars, not only for the presidency, maybe in the National Assembly. There's all sorts that goes on. So if we're a serious nation that truly wants to move forward and be progressive, as the name of the party, you know, it says these are some of the things that we need to look into.
Yeah, because the petrol doesn't come for free, and if we're talking about a removal of subsidy on petrol, then definitely you can imagine the amount you spend to put petrol on that long line of cars.
Exactly. A lot of money spent on so many different things, you know, pleasure, you know, travel. There has to be belt-tightening measures across board, not only for us, the ordinary people.
Well, certainly, I think the president has a lot to do, and it looks just as if he's started work in earnest. So I'd like to thank you for your time, Constance. Thank you very much, Dr. Constance Ikokwu.
You're welcome.